Right there.
Hey everybody, Travis and Laura with High Impact Leadership. Proud to introduce Scott Jeffrey Miller, author of Management Mess to Leadership Success and many other books that I'm sure he will love to share on. Laura and I are both really inspired by Scott's work. I love his simple, direct, and I'm going to use the word a vulnerable approach to how his education goes. I really it really resonates with me when, especially when you talk about, well, I messed that up, because, that's the key to vulnerability. And I tell you, I do that every day. So.
Well, thanks, Travis and Laura. An honor to be here. Thanks for the invitation today.
Yes, it's really exciting to have you here. I know that you're a speaker and an author, as well as a leadership guru in your own right with Franklin Covey for the past many years. So tell us, you have lots of, like you said, vulnerable moments. What were your favorites to share as you were writing Management Mess to Leadership Success?
Well, that I'm not an author. So the first vulnerable moment was that I wrote my first book and I wasn't an author. I mean, I don't know at what point you become an author, right? I had written many LinkedIn articles and I had a column with Inc. magazines. Maybe I was a columnist or a blogger, but my first vulnerable confession is that I wasn't an author. But you've mentioned that word a couple of times. I really think that vulnerability is a leadership competency, like reading a P&L and calculating margin and hiring and terminating. That vulnerability is something that isn't just a nice to have now. It's a must have competency as a leader, because people want to relate to their leaders. They want to learn not just from their leaders' successes, but from their messes. So that's why I wrote the book, is because I just think we learn more from our messes. We teach better from our messes than we do our successes.
Well, there's a funny thing about that is I make a joke when I'm talking about vulnerability, and I use the reference of, like, being vulnerable is being able to say I'm sorry, or hey, I need help, or you're better at this than me. And my joke is, well, if you get somebody that comes at you 10 times with that, is like, now is it a vulnerable thing or an incompetence thing? It's like, where does that lead? Where does that line cross?
Well said. It's to your point, Travis, that much of the books that I'm writing draw upon insights that I glean, not just from my own career, but from others as well. I would see these, whether they were salespeople or project managers that were incapable of asking for help. They had to be like the lone wolf, and they always fizzled out. People who have the best careers exercise this humility where they're very comfortable or confident even asking for help from somebody else, leveraging other people's institutional knowledge and their skills. They don't hoard information. They don't try to do it themselves. That never works long term.
Interesting.
Well, two things that I in particular would really like to hear about is you have a cool announcement of you're doing a solo venture now and doing some things and incorporating your sons. I'm really excited to hear about a little bit of that. And then specifically, I would love to, one of my favorite challenges that I like to read, that I've read about, is challenge number 12, and that's lead difficult conversations. So I'll let you take the reins of whichever you'd like to talk about first.
Well, Travis, thank you. So it's true, after 25 years with the Franklin Covey Company, from literally the front line to the C-suite, I was the chief marketing officer for about 7 years, and I was the executive vice president of thought leadership for 2 years. I stepped away from the firm on my own terms. The CEO and I are still very good friends, but I'm still consulting for the company. I am privileged to host for them their podcast called On Leadership with Scott Miller. It's actually the world's largest subscribed to leadership podcast. It goes out to more than 7 million people every week, and I'm still writing books for them and speaking for them. So I'm still associated with Franklin Covey, but after 25 years, the CEO and I came to the agreement that I wanted to go do some more entrepreneurial things. As you mentioned, my wife and I have 3 sons that are 6, 8, and 10. And it's always been a dream of mine to develop a business where they can learn how to take out the garbage and count the cash and greet the customers and check the inventory and thank people for their business. Just like fundamental life skills, leadership skills, business skills, right? You don't have the right to exist. You have to earn it over and over again, as you two know, right, with your clients. So I could have opened up a store, but now is the wrong time for that, a retail store. So what I did was I launched a new business at scottjeffreymiller.com, where I speak and I write, and I have an 11-module career coaching session called Ignite Your Genius. So if you want to go to scottjeffreymiller.com, you can register for all of that. All my blogs are there, all my interviews. There's a lot of information there for your own development. So that's been exciting. After 25 years of a W-2, I'm venturing out into the 1099 world. Some of your listeners might know what that's like, right? That's a little scary.
Sure.
It's also exhilarating, right?
Yes.
But to your point, so I wrote this book called Management Mess to Leadership Success, 30 Challenges to Become the Leader You Follow. And Franklin Covey, who many of you all know, is of course founded by Dr. Stephen R. Covey, wrote the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That book sold 40 million copies in 30 years. And in our 40 years in business, we learned a few things, as you would expect, from literally millions of client engagements. So I took 30 of those learnings and put it in this book. And to most people's horror, I shared my mistakes and my messes and things that I wish I would have done differently as teaching moments. One of them is the one that you mentioned, which is really this idea around, I think one of the 3 most important things a leader does is to provide people feedback on their blind spots.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm so passionate about this that I believe as a leader, if you can't do this, if you're incapable or unwilling to exercise the courage to move outside of your comfort zone and to discuss the undiscussables, then you don't deserve to be a leader. That you ought to step down immediately. And that perhaps is a little bit harsh to some, but I'm passionate about that because I think one of the top 3 contributions, I can talk more about those if you want me to, is this gift that you give your people is summoning the courage and the diplomacy to talk to people about their blind spots, because we all have them, right? None of us are as self-aware as we think we are, including me. You know, whenever my wife back in the olden days would go to a dinner party on Friday nights, there was that dreaded drive home where she would say to me, you had to go there. You promised me you wouldn't discuss politics. Or, you had to bring up Trump, right? Anybody been there? Ever been that dreaded drive home with your wife?
Yeah.
Where you get like 1 block out of the house and like, are you kidding me?
Okay, so I'm going to interject a thought here. So my family, we have the same thing where we have people on both sides, and we're able to talk about things mostly. When things start to get a little elevated, we have a safe word, you know, and it's funny because it's John Wick.
That's a safe word.
The movie with Keanu Reeves where he's the assassin and wants to kill everybody.
Yeah.
So, to prevent us from killing each other. So
I like it. I like it.
when we say John Wick, it's like, okay, back off. So
I probably need a safe word. It probably would be 2 words. My wife, shut up, would probably be the word that she would use. But my wife is a great governor. Anyway, to our point, Travis, is I really think that for those of you who are watching and listening right now, think really deliberately that you might need to summon a higher level of courage. You might need to develop some skills that you don't have to give people feedback on their blind spots, because this is a vital role that you give your people. In fact, I'd even ask those that are listening and watching, think of somebody in your life, their 30s, their 40s, their 50s, their 60s, their 70s, that have self-defeating, annoying habits, right? They say stuff, they do stuff, whatever it is they do, that they're still repeating in their 60s and 70s. Let me tell you, it's likely because they never had a leader who loved them enough to risk not being liked.
I love
I'm going to repeat that
too, because, you know, I always tell my kids, you can't do better until you know better. So it's part of that's right, that feedback, that until I know better, I might be doing the same things I'm not even aware I'm doing, and I can't do better until I know better. So if you share that with me, and so I've taken that into my business life as well.
Laura, so well said. These people have never had a leader who loved them enough to risk not being liked, because we know that leadership's tough. It's unrewarding, can be unrelenting. I've heard it called adult babysitting. I'm sure my boss sometimes thinks that's what he was doing with me on occasion. But this idea is really, how much do you care about your people? Do you care enough to move outside your comfort zone and discuss their communication habits, discuss their inability to take responsibility for their actions, to offer apologies, excuse-free apologies? Can you discuss their personal hygiene? I mean, I do this all the time. I mean, here's a role play. I'm going to pick Travis because we're the same gender. Hey, Travis, thanks for coming in my office today. Hey, I'm so delighted you're here. I need to have a bit of a high courage conversation with you. In fact, I'm a bit nervous. I might use the wrong words. My intent, Travis, is to help you better appreciate what might be a blind spot, because I want you to have a great career here. And Travis, I noticed that, like me, sometimes in the hot summer Utah days, you might be breaking through your antiperspirant. It happens to all of us. It happens to me. Sometimes we build up a chemical reaction, right, to our deodorant, and I'd hate for anybody to notice it because it happens to all of us. But I care about you, and I want you to be in possession of a strong brain. You get the point, right? I declared my intent. I admitted some humility. I indicated I was a bit nervous, and then I launched right in. And so when you're giving high courage feedback, here's a couple of thoughts. First is check your intent. What is my intent? Is my intent to embarrass them? Because some of us have that intent. Good people can still have bad intent. Is my intent to capitalize on them? Is my intent to get one up on them? Check your intent. And then when it is pure, declare your intent. Use those words. I'd like first to declare my intent. And then don't beat around the bush. Talk straight. In fact, you can even say, I'm going to talk straight. I might use the wrong words. I might have to get a do-over, but my intent is to help you. And then I would argue that you should talk straight. Now, let me give you one caveat. I'm actually pretty good at this. I'm good at giving high courage feedback. And I'll talk to anybody about anything. The problem is I'll talk to anybody about anything. And when I do, sometimes I cross the line. Sometimes if I'm not careful, my loud voice, my strong presence, my vocabulary can intimidate people. It can diminish people. Sometimes my body language can look very stern, right? I mean, sometimes I'm just passionate, but I look angry. So I got to role play it with someone who I trust in confidence so that my body language, my rate, my tone, my pitch, my presence in the room, the power dynamic, where I'm standing, where I'm sitting, how loud I am, doesn't rob someone of their self-esteem or crush their self-confidence or worse, their self-worth. So I have to calibrate. Now that's recognizing that I bring a lot of courage to the table. The opposite is also true of some people. They bring too much consideration, too much diplomacy. And because they're more shy and perhaps retiring in their style, they obfuscate. They beat around the bush. That they put someone on a performance plan and the person leaves scratching their head going, what was that about? Because they have no idea what really happened in the meeting because it was so genteel. It was so difficult for them to talk straight and tell the truth. So I think a great leader that provides feedback balances courage and consideration. Laura.
So what is your advice to me? Because I went really from the beat around the bush to the really direct. Because I didn't want there to be any more beating around the bush. So I think I kind of skipped over. And then in an effort to be not misunderstood, I have found that I can be a little too direct. And so
congrats to you on your self-awareness, right? Really, because none of us are as self-aware as we think we are. So first, congratulations to you on recognizing you might have swung the pendulum too far. I would just really say, I'd say role play is the best thing, right? You can role play a meeting and still not share that person's interpersonal baggage, right? You can not share their name in a role play with a confidant. And then let that person, perhaps it's Travis, give you some feedback. You kind of glossed over the key point, or it took you 5 minutes to get in to the information, right? I mean, I was dying on this end of the conversation. I think the best tip is this. Ask yourself, if this information was being delivered to me, how would I want to hear it? In what order? With what level of respect? With what kind of tone of voice? And when you ask yourself, how would someone else want to hear it? That's valuable, because the golden rule is treat others how you want to be treated. Platinum rule is treat others how they want to be treated, because different people might need to receive the feedback differently.
Yes. I love that.
And we do speak a lot about know your people. As I want to say, you said slow is fast, fast is slow, and I really appreciate that, because it takes time to build up that baseline, the fundamental foundation of trust. And
Travis, so well said, right? Trust is everything. And as a leader, if you think you're going to give someone feedback that they're going to accept an action on, and you haven't behaved yourself into a reputation with them of being trustworthy, you're deluding yourself. Feedback comes when you have built trust with someone where they know your intent is to help them, where they're willing to be more vulnerable, let their guard down, and be embarrassed, right? And perhaps even become emotional. some of my best feedback sessions are where the other person cried. Because you know what? To me, it was a sign of respect. They trusted me. They trusted me not to sell them out, not to capitalize on it, perhaps close the blinds, give them some tissue. It's okay. I've been there. I've been on that side of the table many times. Let me tell you, you're safe with me. Gather yourself, ask any questions you have. I'm here to help you.
I love that.
Wow.
That's beautiful. The sad thing is I'm the
It
one.
wasn't always that good. Let me tell your guests and listeners and viewers, it wasn't always that good, right? People ask me, how did I come good at this? Well, I screwed up the first 40 of these, right? I said the wrong thing. I made someone cry. I had no self-awareness of what it was like to be on the other end of it. I role played, I practiced. And then I started to treat people the way they wanted to be treated, and then just have my steamroller technique roll over everybody, right? Some people need feedback delivered in different ways at different times.
Well, then you said something earlier about, stating your intent and how to be very clear. And we used what day is that? State your intent. That's day.
Actually, I think it's 2 because I think we talked about it today,
Day 4, right?
Oh,
so we had a fun little exercise. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had a fun little exercise today. We did, we just threw out the word boat and asked several people on our team to draw what they were thinking. And of course it generated several different types of boats. Mine was powerboat.
Mine would be scary.
But taking a simple word like draw a boat and then get all these different perspectives is like, because it means something different to everybody.
It does. If I can build on that, one of the smartest things I've ever heard from a Franklin Covey colleague is this: nearly all, if not all, conflict in life comes from mismatched or unfulfilled expectations. And so to your audience, if you're dealing with conflict in your life, your mother-in-law, your spouse, your kids, your neighbors, your pastor, your imam, your rabbi, the committee leader, the fundraiser, your boss, your colleagues, ask yourself, is that conflict come from they thought I was going to do this and I thought they were going to do that, and it's violated? Because when you declare your intent up front in any conversation, you will drastically minimize the conflict. Because now you will say, Patricia, I would love to bake the brownies for next week's block party like I have done for the last 7 years, but this month I can't. I'm too overcommitted, and I would rather disappoint you today than disappoint you next Friday night when I call you and tell you I can't do it. And it requires you sometimes, again, to move outside your comfort zone and tackle things up front by declaring your intent. I would like to make the brownies. I would like to help you, but I can't. And if I do, I will now violate a promise I've already made to someone else. So I'd rather tell you now. If something changes, I'll let you know. But I think it's a gift. This quote, nearly all, if not all, conflict in life comes from mismatched or unfulfilled expectations. If you have conflict anywhere in your career or in your life, ask yourself, if I could have clarified my intent or my expectations more so up front, could I have lessened the conflict? The answer is yes in almost every case.
Yeah. I'm sure of it. I'm sure of
Yeah.
it. I love that. Well, you had mentioned there was 3 things. What were those 3 things?
Yes. Yeah. I'm glad you came back to that.
We got the first one of courage, of being able to actually have those difficult
I actually think it's the second one. Let me tell you, I think it's the second one. So here are the 3 things. Like you all, I've spent much of my career in the leadership space, formal as a leader, writing, teaching, speaking, developing content, selling it, implementing it. And I don't think that mission, vision, and values are the first 3 jobs. And we hear a lot about that. I think it's very important, building culture. It's all very important, mission, vision, and values. We also hear a lot about systems and structures and strategies, also very important. But I'm the guest, so here are my 3. I think the number 1 contribution of a leader is to recruit and retain talent.
Yes.
Recruit and retain talent. Talent that is noticeably, palpably smarter, more qualified than you are. And that takes a level of confidence, of humility that most leaders lack. Most leaders are not capable of demonstrating the humility to go out and recruit people who are smarter than they are, from a better school, more degrees, more experience, because we're threatened by them. Because we feel like we need to be the smartest person in the room. We need to be the genius in the room. That's not true. Your job, to quote Liz Wiseman, who wrote a great book called Multipliers, as a leader, your job is not to be the genius, but to be the genius maker of others. So I think the first role of a leader is to recruit and retain talent that is smarter, more palpably, noticeably talented than you are. And then don't just hold them in your division, but to pollinate them across the company, in supply chain, in marketing, in the Taipei office, in the Chicago office, and survey where is all that talent across the organization. Because too often people stop at the retain piece and they hoard them on their team so that their team looks the best, right? Push it out across the company. That's the first.
I love
The
it.
second, I think, is this idea of providing people feedback on their blind spots. We talked about that. The third is to revisit your opening comments, Travis, around vulnerability. I think vulnerability, as I mentioned before, is a leadership competency. Vulnerability means that you're willing to teach from your mistakes. You're willing to admit what your problems are. I'm a stutterer. I have a lifelong speech impediment. I had speech pathology classes for decades. I was a speech therapist. I've had braces twice, headgear. I wear a retainer about 15 hours a day. There are about 35 words that I cannot say in public, and it quadruples in the wintertime because the cold weather exacerbates my stutter significantly. And I don't share that gratuitously. I share it sometimes in audiences, sometimes I don't. But when I do, people inevitably walk up to me and say, wow, so do I, or I have this problem or that problem. Thanks for sharing that. And so I think it's a job of the leader to make it safe for people to bring their whole selves to work. It's safe. It makes, as a leader, your job is to own your messes. That's why I called the book Management Mess. Because when you own your mess, you make it safe for others to talk about and own theirs. Not to wallow in it, not to make excuses, but to learn from it. So as a leader, when you're vulnerable, you teach from your mistakes. Gather everybody around once a week and say, you know what? Here's this week's lesson. Here's the biggest mistake I ever made, right? Here's the lawsuit I was involved in, and here's all the reasons why, and here's what I should have done differently. Let me tell you, I've only been married once, and I hope it's only once, but if you have been married more than once, maybe it's appropriate to share why your marriage broke up. What did you do wrong? Why it took longer for your degree to be achieved, why you got fired from your first job, right? Maybe you don't bring your divorce into the workplace. You can just right?
Should we bring the ex on stage with us?
But there are some teachings there, are there not?
Yes.
There could be some moments of humility as a leader where you talk about how your arrogance or your lack of life balance or your lack of aligning your values with your passions and priorities got your life out of work. There could be some great teachings from your personal life in the workplace. My point is, as a leader, it's your job to make it safe to take risks. It's your job to demonstrate the humility to teach from your mistakes. And I think that's not for everyone. It doesn't come easy for everyone.
No, it doesn't.
And I think it's the leader that people cleave to. When a leader is willing to admit their mistakes, not gratuitously. That's not a confessional from the Catholic Church. I'm Catholic, so it's easy for me to confess my sins. You can see that in me. But it's to judiciously say, could they learn from this? Right? Will my stature be intact if I share this? Most cases, yes.
Yes, for sure. For sure. I love that. Wow.
I
learned a lot today.
Yeah, this was
Oh,
so
good.
much fun.
I'm delighted.
I really enjoyed having you here, touching on some of these parts. I'm so excited to dig in. I wish I could actually dig in with every single one of your 30 tips.
Well, there's more coming because the book actually did well enough, Laura, that the publisher has signed me to a multi-volume, multi-year series. So I've just finished Marketing Mess to Brand Success.
Yes.
It comes out in May of 2021. I'm just completing Job Mess to Career Success, comes out in 2022. And I'll have Communication Mess, Sales Mess, and my oldest son and I will start writing Parenting Mess to Launch Success. It'll come out in about 4 years. All those are on scottjeffreymiller.com.
I love it.
So not to be a complete nerd, but you did bring up a couple things, and it's like, let's really carry
you've got the granddaddy of them all, you know. Great book. Dr. Covey passed away about 9 years ago as a result of a head injury from a bicycle accident in his 80th year. But his legacy looms large. That book still sells about 4,000 copies a week around the world. No, just in
Isn't that
America.
Well, you know,
So it's a timeless book.
what's funny about this book is I know I read it 15 years ago, and then I probably read it again 10 years ago, and somebody brought it up again and really brought it up because of something else we're working on, and it was like the whole body concept, you know, and it's like in 7 Habits, and I'm like, what? And I got to go back and read that book. So I grabbed it off the shelf again. Now it resonates it's like, oh.
And a new
So
edition.
Travis, we just updated it, the 30th year. One of Dr. Covey's sons, Sean Covey, who wrote the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens,
Yes, which
he actually updated the book. Didn't change a word in his dad's manuscript, but added new insights after each chapter for kind of our generation.
Oh, nice.
And that book is now available also. I encourage people to pick it up.
Oh,
Excellent.
yeah, for sure. We will. Well,
So-
we look forward to following all of your exciting new ventures.
Thank you, Laura.
And again, Scott, where can everybody find you at?
Yeah, so you can follow me on LinkedIn, on Twitter, on Facebook, but you also can connect to me via my website, which is scottjeffreymiller.com.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Hey,
sir.
thank you
for joining
both.
us today.
My honor. Thanks so much for the platform.
Thank you.